r/AskReddit, when you're lying in bed at night, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you did/said years earlier? And then beat yourself up over it even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? The person I was, and am, in love with said they had feelings for me. My response? Nice. Holy shit, WTF was I thinking?
Nice.
One time when I was 16 I went on a ride along with my local police department. They got a call from a woman who spoke only Spanish to come to her apartment building because her neighbors were being jackasses and harassing her. So we go up to her apartment to ask her what had happened. And she is crying extremely hard and trying her best to explain the situation in broken English. So my dumbass thinks I got an A in Spanish this year. I bet I could understand what she is saying and help the situation. So I tell the police officer that I could translate what she is saying. So she is speaking through tears and is basically incoherent, not that I could have understood what she was saying if she was not upset. And after she is finished the officer looks at me ready for my response, and what do I say? Yeah, she's really upset. The way that the officer looked at me will be forever seared into my brain. I am a dumbass. This one is my favorite so far, ha ha ha. First year in high school, it was 2012 and I was big into memes, but like troll face memes. So I was trying to impress my new friends before French class. We heard that there was going to be a sub for the class, so we naturally thought we could do basically nothing that class and mess around. So my big brain said to my body, it's time to do a robot dance and say troll mode activated and try my best to do the troll face. Nobody laughed. Nobody even smiled. It haunts me. I was at a new school and had just made my first friend. She was showing me around and we were walking down the hallway. I grabbed her hand. This was a normal thing to do among my old friend group. We all held hands all the time. It was not the norm at this school. Really weirded her out. Many others as well. But that's the one that came to mind first. I've done similar things. My friends and family are all big huggers. I've learned through many an awkward experience that it's better to ask first with new people lol. I'm a big hugger. My strategy is to ask, are you a hugger or a handshaker when I first meet someone? That way a fellow hugger can get an awesome hug and a non-hugger doesn't feel pressured or awkward. It works for me, anyway. When I was 15 I went on a school trip to France. I started spending a lot of time with this guy who I never talked to because we were in different years. Anyways, that week we spent a lot of time together, especially during bus rides, and I really liked him and I had the feeling he did too. When we were coming back home someone brought up how it was unlikely that we'll talk to each other when we go back to school, since we were in different year groups and different circles in general. To avoid having that conversation I asked him what his favorite part of the trip was. He said I liked the bus rides. Especially the long ones. They were pretty fun when you sat next to the right person. That was such a sweet thing to say and I completely brushed it off and said something like oh I liked museums. It was like he opened the window to something and I just shut him down. Looking back I can't remember why. Caught me off guard I guess. Sometimes I stay up at night thinking how different high school would have been if I had said something else. I'm probably way too late, but this happened a few weeks ago and I can't stop thinking about it. I recently started a new job, and I'm basically the only guy in my section of the office. My fiancé and I's puppy recently got kennel cough, and so I asked if my direct supervisor would mind if I just finished the day from home. The ladies I work with, all my age, go what kind of puppy do you have? And for some inexplicable fucking reason, I said Yorkie, he's a French bulldog. So, I immediately panicked and was like oh my gosh, I have no idea why I just said that. Hess a Frenchie, haha. And at this point they're all kind of staring at me. And I was super uncomfortable, and I went my mom's Yorkie recently died, and laughed commiseratingly, as if that explained my mistake. And one of them goes are you laughing because your mom's dog died, or? So anyway, now I'm the weird new guy who lies about random dumb stuff for no reason, and thinks dead animals are funny. Sigh. Guess. This was years ago at a consignment shop I used to own. Long cold day at the shop. I often worked alone and it was very physical. The building was from the 1800s. So a customer's kid came up and told me that there was a big dead bug in the display window. I immediately said, why don't you pick it up and eat it? I then proceeded to laugh like a lunatic uncontrollably. I still have no idea why I said it and still often laugh to myself when I think about it. I currently live in an apartment complex on campus at my university, so it's only college-aged people who live here. I randomly met a kid when I was drunk last weekend who I remember seemed like he didn't have a lot of friends, so I struck up a convo with him and it came out he lived in the same apartment complex. I gave him my number and the following weekend he asked me if he could borrow my laundry key, so I said yes, come to my room. He shows up to my door and he says, "Thanks man, sorry I have no idea where mine went, I appreciate it though, if you want I can get us some beer to pay you back?" I replied, "Oh no, it's all good man, it's no inconvenience to me if you use my card, just bring it back when you're done." I didn't realize until a couple days later that he probably just wanted a friend and feels like I shot down his offer of hanging out. I suck. It's not too late, you can send him a text, say how about that beer? But in a super cool way, you know. You just reminded me of the time when my teacher looked towards me, smiled and said, "How are you?" There was silence for a moment, so I naturally assumed she was talking to me and said, "Not too bad." "Good thanks, you?" replied her trainee teacher, who had been standing behind me. Edit. Just to clarify, I'm no longer in school and this still haunts me. This reminds of the time I was playing with like an eraser or something during class when I was in like 3rd grade and me teacher came up to me and held her hand out. I have no idea why, but I have her a high five, but instead she was trying to take my eraser. I recently started at a fancy-ass school. The principal asked me how many people went to my old school, 650. I thought about sounding cool enough and said 650. Last year my boyfriend was going to pick me up at my parents' apartment and he texted me when he was in front of the building. I came out and sat on the passenger's seat. It wasn't my boyfriend's car. It wasn't even the same model, just the same color. The driver laughed and told me I probably meant to get into the car in front of his. My boyfriend was pissing his pants when I finally got in. I was very young. Like 4? My whole family went to a doctor's visit. My brother was like 8 at the time and had to pull down his pants. When it was my turn the doctor called me over. I walked up to him and pulled down my pants too. My parents and him laughed so loud. All he needed was to check my ears. You were trying to be helpful. I do this all the time. Today I remembered when someone was talking about how to tell if there were bugs in a hotel room, as in recording devices, and I thought they meant actual bugs. I have no idea why this is humiliating years later. Something similar happened to me a year or 2 ago, back when the floss first became a thing. Kids were talking about whether they knew how to floss, but I hadn't heard about the dance move and thought they were talking about flossing my teeth. I told them that of course I knew how to do it, who didn't, so they asked me to demonstrate. It was around then that I realized they weren't talking about the thing you do with your teeth. Edit. I was the same age as them. Not sure if that makes it better or worse. Past summer I was A+1 at a wedding. There was an older woman going wild on the dance floor. I said, "Wow, someone get that lady." A pole bride was right behind me and said, "That's my mother," then walked away. I still feel bad, but you really should have seen her go. When I was like 7, I mistook a woman for being my mother and threw myself at her and declared that I was thirsty. My mother was standing right next to her. It haunts me to this day. Edit. Apparently this is a very common traumatic event amongst children. F to pay respects for our dignity. I was in Avon's a few years back when I felt my hand being grabbed. I looked down and a little boy was holding my hand. I said hello and he got the most shocked look on his face and started to cry. A second length, a year, his dad appeared looking all disheveled. I said hello, your son thought I was you for a second and grabbed my hand. He laughed and thanked me. Aha! Just last night this occurrence took place in my mind. On the verge of falling asleep I come to a mortifying social derp realization. I sent a song to my friend over 2 years ago that I knew they would love. And they did. They enthusiastically shared how awesome this song was. And thanked me. For some ungodly reason, 2 years later, I realized that it was in fact this friend who had shared the song with me only a month prior to that. I died a little bit more on the inside last night. Back in elementary school, I rode the bus called Bus 2. Because there were so many buses, and I overheard someone talking about riding Bus 2, so I said these exact words, "I ride Bus 2 too." And everyone heard it as a tutu and made a joke that I rode a tutu to school. I just hate myself for even thinking to say anything on that topic. The hottest guy in class asked me for some gum. I was searching in my bag and passed a tampon and thought, wouldn't that be funny if I gave him one on accident? Then to my horror, as I went to give him the gum in my hand was the fucking tampon. He just looked at me and said no thanks. I feel like a little troll came and switched the gum, cause I still to this day, 20 years later know I grabbed the gum. I was standing with my cousin and some people he knew. They were about to part ways and one of them walked right towards me and said, "See you later." Was confused because I hadn't said a word to any of these people but said okay, went to give a hug, then realized they were going for my cousin who somehow materialized right behind me. They were all cool though, knew it happened but acted like it didn't for my sake. Whenever I served, someone asked me what I recommended and I meant to ask if he liked salads but phrased it as "Are you into salads?" Don't know why that one haunts me so much. This thing I did in 6th grade always haunts me. So back in 6th grade I was in the student council of my elementary school. What we did was basically help out and do small things for the school. For instance, for Christmas we made little bags of reindeer food, but we also had other little activities we could sign up for. One of these activities we could choose to do was to go on the school news and say when the council was and what classroom it was being held, and the only thing was they didn't give us a script or anything, just the basic premise of what we had to say. My antisocial camera shy ass decided hey it would be fun to do and everyone at the school will be watching me, but what I didn't realize was everyone was going to be watching me. So the time came and I was waiting for the camera to switch at me where it dawned upon me I didn't know what to say and that everything was live, no delay or editing. Eventually they switched to me and I stood there and said nothing for a solid 30 seconds until the librarian in charge looked over at me. I managed to stumble out a few words but every word that came out was full of stuttering and voice cracks and I'm certain my face was beet red. It got to the point where nearly vomited. I eventually got the mess of an announcement out and I walked out of the newsroom and not even 3 steps out the library I threw up right on the sidewalk. No one looked me in the eyes that day and no one even mentioned it to me, but I know they knew and this is what keeps me up at night nearly 7 years after the event happened. TLDR, was on Live School News making a club announcement, stuttered it out full of voice cracks and nearly threw up. Did you make it through the whole video? If so, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Have a good day, or night, or evening, or morning, or whatever.